explore this vast world, yet here you are, doing the bidding of others.
Hey guys, how's it going? Lagro here, bringing you another build guide for 3.10 Delirium. This time for my strength stacking Brutus Lead Sprinkler Berserker. This character has 15 million plus Shaper DPS with all our charges. We have 8k life and we regen 2.6k life every second. This makes the character a well-rounded bruiser for all content the game throws at it. This build was a bit difficult to get going since the damage you need is a lot higher in this league than leagues before. The way I've built this, we try to utilize the split personality gems with plus 5 strength and plus 5 max life. These stats increase by 1 for each passive point between our starting point in the skill tree and the placement of the jewel. So we try to place them as far away as possible while also being effective with our pathing and picking up useful nodes along the way. Doing this cost me a lot of regrets, trying different ways, so that's gonna save you a lot of trouble figuring this out yourself. You can find the link to Path of Building in the description, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Before we go into the details of this guide, I want to give you some gameplay tips of playing this character. Bind your Enduring Cry to left click and hold that down as you move at all times. This will trigger Enduring Cry on cooldown and keep your endurance charges and life regen up at all times. Then you bind Rallying Cry to another key and just hold that down when you need to refresh Rallying Cry. The duration of Rallying Cry is 29 seconds, so it's not that often. I have my Rallying Cry on space. Another tip is to use the range of Tectonic Slam on bosses. There is no reason to be in melee range when you hit the whole screen. This will give you a lot more safety than a pure melee skill. I really enjoyed making this build. It's very satisfying trying to balance a huge amount of strength with resistances and other useful nodes in the tree. Let's get on with the guide. We start off with the gearing section. Our main hand weapon is Brutus Lead Sprinkler. Since these are very cheap, I went for a very good rolled one. The main stats I sort them by are attack speed and critical strike chance. If you have a lot of money, you could also go for one corrupted with % increased attack speed. Since this is a strength stacking build with 1700 to 2000 strength, there is no other option for weapon here. The 4 to 7 fire damage to attacks per 10 strength will give us 720 to 1260 added fire damage with the Brutus Sprinkler. This is calculated with 1800 strength, so if you get up at 2000 you'll get a bit more. For our offhand, we went for another Brutus Lead Sprinkler. This is the best choice for maximum DPS, and the stat priority on this one is the same as on the main hand one. We go for high attack speed and high critical strike chance. Another option you could go for is a shield. This shield needs to be an energy shield base, and I would recommend getting one with high strength, high % increased fire damage, then resistance, and then life on it. If you're lucky and get one with the above mentioned stats and an open prefix, you can also craft % fire damage as extra chaos. The benefit of having a shield instead of another Brutus is it's going to be easier to cap your resistance, you're going to get a bit more life, and you're also going to have a bit more block chance. Let's continue with our chest piece. In my opinion, there's 3 options here. Let's start with the budget one. Starting this build, I used the Iron Fortress. The Iron Fortress gives you up to 120 strength and 3% increased melee physical instead of 1% per 10 strength. This isn't a big deal because we barely have any fist damage at all, but with 2000 strength this still makes a small difference. The Iron Fortress also have the mod of 1% increased attack block per 50 strength, and this will land me on 48% block chance with dual wield without Rumi's Concoction. This makes the Iron Fortress a very good budget option, and you can find one for around 2x that is 6 linked. Option number 2, which is a little bit more expensive, is Belly of the Beast. This one speaks for itself. We get a lot of flat life from our tree, from our strength, and using Belly of the Beast, roll with 40% increased max life, will give me 500-ish more life than with the Iron Fortress. Our third and last and most expensive option is a Rare Astral Plate, and here we have some options to choose from as well. I went for socketed attacks have minus 15 to total mana cost, % increased strength, attack crit, and also some life and crafted % increased life. Other options here that can be very useful is additional curse, and then squeeze in a flammability blasphemy curse. You could also go for an explode chest, but since we're not scaling fist damage, I would not recommend that investment since those armors are very expensive. I went with the rare armor you can see because it gave me a bit more life, and it makes it much easier to cap the resistance than the Iron Fortress. However, the damage difference between my rare armor and the Iron Fortress is very small. We're talking less than 1% more damage with the chest I'm using. So the Iron Fortress is in no way a bad armor for this build. For the helm slot, I just picked up a helmet with the enchant of % increased chance to create a charge slam for Tectonic Slam, and then we went for high strength, life, and resistance. The reason I have a Warlord helmet is that I wanted to get nearby enemies have a -9 to fire resistance, and the gain accuracy equal to your strength. However, both these mods are very rare, so I just settled with tier 1 strength, life, and resistance when I hit it. The other option for your helmet slot is the Abyssus. However, using an Abyssus, I would recommend using the Iron Fortress for body armor, and also run a Rummies Concoction to negate some of that increased physical damage taken. For our amulet, I opted to go for Soft's Blood, which is super cheap and also the budget option in this build. Then we anoint it with Constitution for a ton of life, and Soft's Blood also gives you flat strength, % increased strength, fire penetration, cover enemies in ash when they hit you, which makes enemies take 20% increased fire damage, and it also gives you Avatar of Fire, which converts 50% of your other sources of damage to fire damage. So with all these stats, you can see why Soft Blood is a very good choice for this build. However, if you want to go really balls to the walls, there's another high-end choice that you can make, which is a Warlord plus Shaper amulet with flat strength, % increased strength, and % increased attributes. And if you're crazy rich, you can also go for 1% increased damage per 15 strength. That would give you a huge damage boost, but there is no way I could afford an amulet like that. Next, let's talk about rings. This is one of the spots we have to get a bunch of resistance, so you wouldn't go for rare rings with high strength, of course, as high resistance as you can find, then life, and maybe Assassin's Mark or Flammability curse on hit on them. For gloves, we went for Hands of the High Templar. This is because we're also running War Cries in this build and want to increase their level as much as possible. The implicits you want to look for are +1 socketed gems, +2 AoE gems, +2 duration gems, +1 frenzy charge, attack crit, and elemental weakness on hit. And you can also get % life if that's an option. Try to get as many of these implicits as you can without breaking the bank. The other option here could be the Oscarm gloves. If we get the gain accuracy equal to your strength on the helmet, these gloves will give you quite a boost to critical strike chance. They are also super cheap, and it's an awesome way to get Assassin's Mark on hit, and you can also get a very good implicit. I tried pairing these with going Juggernaut because you have the increased attack speed per accuracy, and also strength gained as accuracy inherit on their ascendancy. But I choose to go Berserker instead because of the more damage. Going Jugger is viable with this build and will give you more survivability but less damage in clear. For our belt, we went for an Elder Heavy Belt with flat strength as an implicit. We crafted this and got very lucky and landed flat strength, % increased strength, % increased life, high resistance, elemental damage to attacks, and also an open prefix to craft life on it. This is a crazy roll for us and I'm super happy with that craft. The other option you could go here is the Cyclopean Coil with % increased strength implicit. Our last item slot is boots, and here we don't really have many options in my opinion. The best in slot boots would be a rare pair of two-tone boots with flat strength, % increased strength, tailwind on crit, together with as much life and movement speed as you can get. However, as we don't run as much in this build, you don't really need the movement speed. Lastly, in the gearing section, let's talk about flasks. I went for a Bubbling Divine Flask, a Silver Flask, and a Diamond Flask for our magic flasks. You want Bleed, Freeze, and Curse immunity on these. Preferably don't use Curse immunity on your Divine Life Flask because that will not stay up for long since you lose the flask when you get full life. Our unique flasks, we went for Ball of Faith for a ton of damage, and we also went for Etzir's Promise. If you want, you can swap your Divine Flask for a Rummies Concoction for some more block, but I like having the instant life flask for those big hits and clutch moments. Okay, so now we're geared, let's talk about gem setup. Our main link is going to be Tectonic Slam, Pulverize, Elemental Damage with Attacks, Multi-Strike, Inspiration, and Fire Penetration. Try to get as many of these as you can as Awakened gems, but don't waste the 50x on Awakened Multi-Strike unless you have everything else maxed out in the gearing section. In our gloves, we want to socket our War Cries, so that's going to be Enduring Cry, Rallying Cry, Empower, and you can also socket in Blood and Sand here. The reason we have Blood and Sand here is that is a max level 6 or a max level 7 aura if it's corrupted, and giving it plus 5 levels as we do from our gloves will give you 1% more area damage per 1 level, or in Sand Stance 1% more area of effect per level in Sand Stance. So the plus 2 levels is very effective on this aura. Our defensive setup is Cast 1 damage taken level 1, Immortal Call level 3, Wave of Conviction and Combustion. We want to trigger this as often as we can to apply fire exposure with Wave of Conviction, as well as the minus fire resistance if Wave of Conviction ignite them as well from the Combustion support. For our movement skill, we want Leap Slam, faster attacks, maybe Fortify. However, I have a large cluster jewel with Overlord that gives you Fortify on hit with maces, scepter and staves, so we won't need Fortify here. You can also link this with Culling Strike with quality on it. Culling Strike with quality gives you increased attack speed for socketed gems, so that's why we want it. So those are the links we want linked together. Our other gems we want to use is Precision, as high level as you can afford with your mana. You want to use Summon Skitterbots. These will chill and shock nearby enemies. The shock from Skitterbots will make enemies take 15% increased damage, so that's a more multiplier. You will use War Banner for some increased accuracy, Blood Rage, Vol Ancestral Warsheath, and Berserk. We generate Rage with Mob Mentality on a cluster jewel, so we will have Rage for our Berserk. Okay, lastly, we're gonna talk about the skill tree. As I mentioned in the beginning, we try to get as much strength as possible and then traveling as far away as possible from Marauder to get the most effect out of our split personalities. You can find the skill tree and everything else in the path of building in the description. So, key things to pick up in the skill tree. Strength, duh. You need Utmost Might. That's a lot of flat strength and percent increased strength. And we pick up the life while we're there. You need to pick up Battle Cry for instant war cries. And then we go through Master of the Arena, Bravery, and Art of the Gladiator and make our way to the right side of the tree. Go to Herbalism and pick up Thick Skin on the way. Then we pick up the Jewel Socket above Herbalism. This is a very good spot to put your Lethal Pride. Depending on what you get on your Lethal Pride, you will have to decide which nodes to pick up close to Herbalism. I got percent increased strength on Acuity and on Weapon Artistry. That's why I picked those two ups. This was the best I saw out of 50 Divine Orbs. Yeah, that's pretty unlucky. The mods you're looking for on your Lethal Pride are percent increased strength, chance to intimidate on hit, melee crit strike multi, Warcry buff effect, and percent increased life. And then there's also flat strength. The nodes you want to see any of these mods on are preferably Heartseeker, Weapon Artistry, Acuity, or Frenzy Charge. Also check the Force of Nature node for good mods, and if you get something really good there together with the other ones, you could anoint that on your amulet. The next thing we go for in the skill tree is the Jewel Socket above Acrobatics. This is where we're gonna put one of our large cluster jewels. On the large cluster jewel here, I went for Overlord for the Fortify on hit, and then weight advantage for damage, strength, and then chance to deal double damage. Other things you could look for is Devastator, that would give you a chance for mobs to explode. Martial Prowess for some damage, attack speed, and accuracy. In this large cluster, we put one split personality with plus 5 strength and plus 5 life. Also, you put one medium cluster jewel with Crywolf and Mob Mentality. This is for the rage generation, as well as for the Warcry buff effect, as well as Warcry counts as 10 additional nearby enemies. And in this medium cluster jewel, you also put split personality. I went for one with plus 5 strength and 40 accuracy to cap my hit chance. After this Jewel Socket, we now continue up to Blood Drinker, go through that and over to Blood Siphon, pick up Assassination on the way, and keep going up towards Chaos Inoculation. In this Jewel Socket, I put a 5 passive voices. This can easily be done with a 7 passive voices as well, if you're lacking the currency for it. And inside that, we put 3 medium cluster jewels with Crywolf and Provocateur on all of them. That's for more Warcry buff effect, and also the crit strike chance and crit multi versus taunted enemies. All enemies that get affected by your Warcry are taunted, so that's where we taunt the enemies. In the Jewel Socket of all these cluster jewels, we put a split personality with 5 strength and 5 life. These outer ones will give us 76, 78, and 81 strength and flat life. So that is a ton of life and strength. So after you've come this far in the skill tree, we can start picking up close Jewel Sockets to the pathing. and also the big strength nodes we passed by. My character is now level 93, and with another couple of levels I would fill out that large cluster jewel down by acrobatics with another medium cluster jewel with Crywolf and Provocateur. Now over to Ascendancy. We went for Warbringer first. That is a given if you're a zerker with Warcries. Recovering 25% of your life every 1.5 seconds, it's great. And then we also have the 20% attack speed and the 15% chance to deal double damage. Then we went for Flawless Savagery for damage, and into Blitz will give you a ton of attack speed. For Uberlab there is really only one option, and that is Aspect of Carnage. Sure, we like the damage, but the increased damage taken here makes us get one shot sometimes even with 8k plus life. But there is really no other option because Crave the Slaughter is useless since we already have Rage, and Pay Reaver is just a bad node overall. For Bandits I killed all of them because I felt we were kind of starved on skill points. I mean, you can always use more skill points. The other option would, as in like every build, be helping Alira for more crit multi and 15 all res. The 15 all res would also help out with gearing quite a bit, so that's a really good choice as well. And lastly, for Pantheons, I went for Solo the Brand King for less stun locking, and Solo Shakari for reduced chaos damage taken and immune to poison, since we're very low on chaos resistance. All the strength rolls on every gear piece eats up the suffixes we have free for chaos resistance. Okay, that concludes the guide. I hope everyone enjoyed this. And if you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments. I always read all my comments and try to answer all of them, or come ask them in my Twitch stream. All the useful links are in the description, and I wish you all the best until next time.